All right, so this battle between the corporate Democrats and the Congressional Progressive Caucus on this infrastructure proposal that is being put forward right now, the $3.5 trillion one, the battle is heating up, okay? And so there's a new ad that was put out by Justice Democrats, the Sunrise Movement, the Working Families Party, and the Indivisible Team, and they basically put out an advertisement to try to pressure a lot of these corporate Democrats into falling in line with this bill process and how it is going to be unfolding. So I wanted to show you guys this advertisement and then give you a little bit of an update on where we're at right now. It seems like today they're going to try to be moving forward with some sort of a vote on this budget resolution, and so we're going to get some answers today likely, but here's just an advertisement that they decided to put out trying to pressure these people again to fall in line, because really, I mean, they have a lot of leverage. You have a vast majority of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, meaning dozens of members that are on board with blocking the bipartisan $1 trillion shitty watered down one unless and until they also pass the $3.5 trillion one and get them both to Biden's desk at the same time. And basically there's this ongoing stalemate, but hopefully with advertisements like this, the pressure can be continued to be applied. So let's go ahead and watch this.
Joe Biden promised he would build back better, and his infrastructure plan does exactly that, fixing our roads and bridges, making historic investments in clean energy, education, and broadband, expanding Medicare and childcare. But these 9 conservative Democrats are sabotaging Biden's agenda because it would make billionaires and corporations pay their fair share. Tell Representative Gottheimer, stop obstructing President Biden and start working for the American people. Joe Biden.
Right. Okay. So that one was just focused on Josh Gottheimer, who's kind of the guy who's been leading this band of corporate stooges on this campaign to oppose the $3.5 trillion plan. But listen, there's some things that you could say about this, right? Obviously, they're hyping up the bill. It's not it's not the end all be all. It's not the Green New Deal. It's not Medicare for all. It's not any of these real addressing of some of these problems within our healthcare system with climate change, etc. It's not the whole thing, right? We still need to do work even if this bill was passed in its entirety. But I do kind of like the framing that they're going with there, because these are corporate Democrats who pretend to be moderates, right? As the media constantly calls them moderate Democrats, they're not. And they frame that well. They say these are conservative Democrats who are blocking Biden's agenda. And that's just straight up true, right? They are conservative Democrats relative to the American people. There's this weird tendency within the media to basically operate only within the boundaries or the Overton window of whatever these corrupt politicians tell them is feasible or what's reasonable to be able to pass throughout Congress. When what they really should be basing it off and how they classify these different politicians is whether they're moderate, conservative, left-wing, right-wing, is based on what the American people want, right? But they never do that. And so it's a good reframing of that talking point that is typically trolled out by the media, calling them moderates. No, they're not moderates. They're conservatives relative to the American people and the interests that they want, because this bill, this $3.5 trillion bill that they're talking about, is overwhelmingly supported by the American people across the board. Independents support it, Republicans support it, but Democrats support it, and that's the American people, right? So just the fact that there's a disconnect between what the American people want and what these politicians are doing. That's what you got to hammer home, and that's what you got to point out. And I think they do a pretty good job of it. And also tying it to Biden and saying this is Biden's agenda, and these corporate Democrats or these conservative Democrats are blocking Biden's agenda can kind of get in the heads of a lot of these normie liberals and maybe turn them against some of these corporate Democrats. Because again, this is not just like the squad or a couple handful of progressives versus corporate Democrats. This is like the squad, the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden, who all agree that this is how the process should unfold. They should be passing both bills at the same time, not just pass the conservative-led bipartisan one and then give time for conservative Democrats to water down the $3.5 trillion one. That's not what Biden set out to do from the beginning, and he reiterated that. So moderate Democrats say President Biden wants a swift House vote on the infrastructure bill, implying that he prefers they do that before the $3.5 trillion one. But is that what actually what Biden is calling for? No, says the White House spokesperson. So these corporate Democrats were basically trying to go out there and be like, well, Biden said he wanted to pass the infrastructure bill as quickly as possible, so that must mean he wants us to pass the $1 trillion bipartisan one and then go forward with the other one. And his White House was basically straight up asked if this was true, and they just said, no, we want both of the bills on our desk at the same time. So Biden coming out here, landing on the same side as the Congressional Progressive Caucus, not with the corporate Democrats. So, that's a good indication of where they're at right now. And in addition to that, apparently, per one GOP source, one of the 9 moderate Democrats told GOP members that if they don't support the budget, that there are threats to ruin his district during the redistricting process and fire a member's relative that works at the White House. And apparently Bill Clinton also is pressuring them to support it. So it seems like even the establishment side of the Democratic Party are coming out here and trying to actually apply pressure on a lot of these corporate Democrats to fall in line with this budget resolution process. So if this is true, right, obviously it's just based on some GOP source that we don't know who it is, but if this is true and they're actually like threatening to blow up their districts and threatening to fire some of their family members and stuff, it's like, okay, I mean, this is some of that Machiavellian backdoor politics that we know Nancy Pelosi is good at. It's just typically we're on the receiving end of that, and now it's corporate Democrats who seem to be on the receiving end of that. So if that is true and that is the case, then fantastic. And just to give you another piece of this, Democratic centrists say the DCCC is threatening to withhold fundraising if they oppose Biden priority. The House Democratic campaign arm has called holdouts on the party's $3.5 trillion budget, warning their majority is in jeopardy. And Sean Patrick Maloney was also apparently calling these people. So listen, it looks like we have a situation right now, basically, where there's still a standoff, and we're going to get an answer probably today is what they're aiming to do this vote on. And depending how that unfolds, we'll get to see whether or not this pressure campaign actually works, right? Is the DCCC calling them and saying, hey, we might withhold your funding during the next campaign cycle for you, and you might lose your seat if you don't fall in line and back this bill. And that might push corporate Democrats who do serve their donors to the point where they might say, well, if I don't have enough money and donations to run my next campaign and actually win, then maybe I should just fall in line with this agenda. So we'll have to see how this plays out. But credit to Justice Democrats and stuff for putting out that advertisement. I think it's good, and whatever pressure that we can continue to put on these Democrats to fall in line. I mean, listen, all of the chips are in the hands of the people who are falling on the side of the Congressional Progressive Caucus right now. They outnumber the corporate Democrats like 10-1. Basically, they have dozens of them versus just 9 or less corporate Democrats that are standing in the way. So all of the leverage is in the hands of progressives right now. They absolutely cannot screw this up. So basically, how this could unfold, it could go a number of ways. Either these corporate Democrats fall in line and they push through this budget reconciliation process, and we move forward with doing it in a simultaneous way with the conservative bipartisan one and the partisan one at the same time. Or these corporate Democrats are just going to stand firm and say, nope, we're not voting on the budget resolution, and therefore we are going to blow up both bills, and neither of them will get passed. And that would basically just blow up Biden's entire agenda, right? So that would just fuck over Biden in a million ways. It would fuck over Nancy Pelosi because she would look incompetent at whipping her party and getting them in line, but that could also be what she wants, but so we'll have to see how this plays out, and I'll give you guys another update probably tomorrow, depending on how this vote goes today. But yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of these corporate Democrats are feeling some of the pressure that progressives typically feel with these Machiavellian backdoor style politics.